All right. So we're going to talk about what is development, in particular, contrast the conventional view, which is currently dominant and guiding policies being made all over the world, with the Islamic view. So history is the conquest song of the victors. Never been able to track down this saying. Who said it? Who said it? There's an African proverb that tales of the hunt will glorify the hunters until the lions get their own historians. So you see, if you think about it, the hunter is equipped with massive firepower. He hides and shoots the lion from uh, in secret, and the poor helpless lion has no chance in the matter. And then he celebrates his bravery. So obviously, from the other point of view, there is a lot to say, but as long as the hunters write their history, you won't get that. So characteristics which are celebrated in the conquest songs are the desired goals of development. If you look at the prehistory, you will see lots of poems written in a celebration of kings and their might and their courage and their strength. Similarly, if you look at literature, you will see praise of wisdom, character, spiritual qualities. These are the targets, the goals of development in prehistory. If you look at prehistory, wealth is not praised. King Croesus uh, came to an unpleasant end. Ebenezer Scrooge uh, was not a hero by any means. So having wealth, possessing lots of wealth, this was not a praiseworthy characteristic until the great transformation took place, which I will not be able to discuss in any detail. But I think that the book by Carl Polanyi, called The Great Transformation, is one of the most insightful books I've ever read. So it's strongly recommended for those people who want to learn about history. So now, when Britannia ruled the waves, development was defined as being sea power, coal mines, industry, having a climate, and of course, race was also important part of uh, being developed. And I checked it myself. There is no entry for democracy in the Encyclopedia Britannica in 1930. After in the interwar period, the First World War destroyed European power and basically saw the emergence of USA as the world power. And so when they got the stage, then they were able to make their own rules. And of course, their rules were that uh, the power is defined by democracy and by GNP per capita because they had these things. So when there came a time that the United Arab Emirates uh, had a higher GNP per capita than the USA. So this was noticed, and it was realized that GNP per capita is not sufficient as a definition of development, and you must have a good income distribution. Just because a few sheikhs own a lot of wealth, as long as this is not shared with the citizens, then it doesn't qualify as development. Then what happened was that some European countries like Switzerland and Luxembourg and certain others, they they got higher GNP per capita than USA, and they also had much better Gini coefficients, much much more equality of income, Switzerland and Japan, for example. So the US realized that they hadn't quite gotten the definition of development right, and it needed to have also infrastructure. Now, when you come to infrastructure, then US is unbeatable because they have a huge country with dams and roads and so just massive amounts of infrastructure. So they finally nailed it to a definition which nobody could compete with them on. So what I mean by this is that the definition of development changes to suit the powerful. Now, if we think in a little bit more sophisticated way, Michel Foucault said that power is knowledge. Actually, power is the ability to define knowledge. So, what we call development uh, is, uh, is a part of our knowledge, which is defined by those who are powerful, and they define it to mean what suits them. So the 1%, the people, the 8 people who now own more than 3.5 billion, uh, half of the world population, they get to say what is development, and they get to say it in a way which will be helpful to them. So does this mean that development is arbitrary and underdevelopment is just imperialist term for weak, impoverished countries made impoverished by conquest and looting? Well, there is a sense in which this is true. We can certainly we can certainly find criteria easily enough which would reverse the ranking of the countries. So if we look at suicides, crime, loneliness, people in therapy, inequality, injustice, even corruption. I mean, if you look at the standard corruption indices, you will see that, for example, Pakistan rates very low. But that's a very biased way of defining corruption. If we looked at Enron, if we looked at, for example, the Iraq War, in which the US spent trillions of dollars after the government deceived their people into believing that there was weapons of mass destruction there and other propaganda. So that's corruption on a grand scale. So if we look at that, then we would certainly not. So what I'm saying is that um, the um, the people who are in power get to choose the indices, and they get to select which ones they want to use. And certainly there are other ways to define development which would reverse the rankings. So one conclusion could be that, well, there is no way to define development. It's just completely arbitrary. But that's not what I want to say. Actually, part of the power of those who are in power is in their ability to choose that definition. So contesting that definition is important to get justice for those who are poor and weak and oppressed. And this is something that all human beings, all qualified, uh, would like to do, because we are all human beings. And this is something that is built into us. Sympathy for the poor, a strong desire for justice, compassion for the weak and the oppressed. These are things which are built into us as human beings. And if we want to achieve these goals, then one of the things that we need to do is to contest the definition of development. So the current paradigm that GDP per capita is the sole target of development is a very harmful one, because it actually it creates an illusion. Actually, I've discuss this in one of my papers in a more technical way. GDP is the total wealth of a country. GDP per capita performs an imaginary experiment. It says, let's take all of this wealth and distribute it equally to all of the people. Then how much would everyone get? That is your GDP per capita. Now, this is a fake experiment because it never actually happens like that. It is not done. So you create a number which is a misleading number. It is the outcome of an as if experiment which was not actually performed, and it doesn't give a true picture. In particular, the most important thing about it is that it completely hides inequality. If all the wealth is in the hands of one person and 99% of the people have nothing, you have exactly the same GDP per capita. And it is designed to be like this because the people who are powerful do not want you to learn about the amount of inequality that exists in the world. And so Lucas, who is one of the Nobel Prize winning Chicago School economists, he said that of the tendencies that are harmful to sound economists, the most poisonous is to focus on distribution. Basically, they don't want you to think about distribution because if you do, then the game is up. So currently, the theories of development that we are following have created disastrous outcomes. The huge amount of inequality is well known. There is a World Bank evaluation of the development experience over the decade of the 80s and 90s, and it basically acknowledges that the policies that they recommended failed completely to produce any success. Currently, what we have is that there are about $7 trillion in official flows from the poorest country to the richest countries. So it's impossible to achieve development when interest payments on loans that you get. Basically, it's all a game of money in some sense. The countries which have money lend to the countries which don't, and they receive interest payments, which is the tribute which is paid. So today the system of imperialism continues, but the methodology has changed a huge amount. So before we can talk about defining development, we need to have some goal in mind. Development is always development towards some end. So without defining an end, without having a goal, you cannot define development. So first of all, we consider what is the goal of capitalism. So Max Weber, who I'm quoting here, actually nailed it quite precisely. He said that the earning of more and more money, combined with a strict avoidance of all enjoyment of life, because money is an end in itself. It's exactly Ebenezer Scrooge. From the point of view of happiness, it appears absolutely irrational because you just accumulate money without actually using it for creating happiness, either in yourself or in others. Man is dominated by the making of money, by acquisition as the ultimate purpose of his life. Economic acquisition is not for the purpose of satisfying your material needs. So this is actually, I mean, what's your goal in life? It's to make money. I've actually asked some people, and they have answered. So what happens after you make $1 million? Then do you have a game plan? Well, no, I'll think about that after I get $1 million. So that's so ridiculous. I mean, you have this purpose, and maybe it's that famous fishing story, which I won't narrate, but I suppose you know about the man who was fishing by the river, and somebody came and told him about how schemes which would make him very rich. So he said, "Okay, what will happen when I become very rich? Because then you can relax and do whatever you like." Well, I like to fish. Well, I'm already doing that, so I don't need $1 million to be fishing. So, how did we get on this path of the pursuit of wealth when it's irrational? Well, a very clear statement is provided by uh, John Maynard Keynes. He said that uh, we have exalted some of the most distasteful of human qualities into the position of the highest virtues. The love of money as a possession is a disgusting morbidity, a semi criminal, semi pathological propensity which one hands over with a shudder to the specialist in mental disease. So, actually, despite this, um, he continues, this is the next paragraph, but okay, beware. We don't want to currently stop people from pursuing wealth. For at least another 100 years, we must pretend that fair is foul and foul is fair, because avarice and usury and precaution must be our gods, because they can lead us out of the tunnel of economic necessity into daylight. So there was this misconception which Keynes had and which a lot of people had, that once we accumulate enough wealth, then everyone will be happy. We will be able to enjoy high standards of living. So they had a two-step plan. The first step was to gather wealth. And how to gather wealth? Well, just make everybody pursue wealth irrationally. Once the wealth accumulates, then there will be a huge change. Keynes has said that there will be a great change in the code of morals. Once we have, once there is no scarcity, everybody will have plenty. There will be love and happiness and everything. But this was a mistake. Keynes was a genius. He was right about many things, but he was wrong about this. Unconstrained pursuit of wealth has led to massive and increasing inequality. It has led to loss of happiness. It has led to power concentrated in the hands of a very small number of people and corporations. It has led to looming environmental catastrophes, potentially the extinction of humankind. So, uh, you see, Keynes realized that even though pursuit of wealth is a disgusting morbidity, we should encourage it in the people. Uh, but his followers did not understand the distinction. So when you get to Wall Street, then they started saying greed is good, and basically the idea that this is a temporary measure that we are taking to accumulate wealth, and once we get wealth, then we will change our character and we will become generous and share it with others. This idea was lost, and basically this is the wisdom of the ancients all across. So Aristotle said that wealth is not the good we are seeking; it is useful for the sake of something else. This idea was lost. In the Quran, it is written that those who hoard up gold and silver and spend it not in the way of Allah, they will receive a painful doom. The Bible says that the love of money is the root of all evil, and it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God. And Lao Tzu said that do not race after riches, or you will let slip the heaven within you. So the ancients were well aware of the dangers of the pursuit of wealth as a goal. But this ancient wisdom was rejected, partly because of this idea that all tradition is wrong and we must arrive at the truth for ourselves. So, um, so this it was also part of the great transformation, again, which I cannot go into, but basically uh, a society built on principles of kindness, compassion, looking after each other was changed into a market society where everything is for sale and wealth is the measure of everything. and the pursuit of wealth is paramount. So, just one small element that one of the reasons, it's a very complicated historical process, but one piece of insight that we can get into this, because this actually shapes our own minds. So it's very useful to understand where, I mean, we have certain ideas. We think that these ideas are our own ideas, but actually they're not. They're part of a flow of a historical stream where certain ways of thinking originated. So if you understand that, then you can free yourself and free your own mind of the grip of these ideas. So you see, what happened in the West was that, well, there was the Reformation, the Catholic Church, and the Protestants. They were fighting each other, and ultimately, people got sick and tired of all of the fights between the different religious groups, and they said, let's have a secular society where the common ground is determined by logic and reason, and let everybody have their own religion in their in their separate corners, but let's not bring it into the public domain through violence and cruelty and ruthless uh, uh, massacres and so on. So that was agreed upon. One thing important to understand is this was agreed upon by religious leaders, not by atheists. The religious leaders were also sick and tired of all of this fighting. So now, when you have a secular society, then there is then the secular society cannot agree on goals, because by definition there are different groups with different religions and different goals. So they agreed upon a compromise that, okay, let people have freedom and let people have wealth, and they can pursue whatever goals they want. So this is the common denominator among the groups, that let everybody be free to follow their own religion. Let everybody have the means, the material means, to pursue their own goals. So both of these, freedom and wealth, these are intermediate goods. These are not final goods. Freedom itself is not a valuable thing. Freedom is valuable because it allows you to do what you want to do. Same for wealth. So, however, in a secular society, these things which were means became actually goals. And this transition happened. So, we all believe, having lived in a secular society, that freedom is a great thing. Well, and also pursuit of wealth has no problems. But both of these are actually problematic things. And the thing is that uh, clarity is needed on goals, and this clarity is lost. And if we lose clarity, if you say, okay, you're free, do whatever you want to do, but we don't tell you what you should do, what are the valuable things to do. We say that you must learn this on your own. So then we are reducing a society to a childlike state. There is a collective wisdom about how what is the good life. There's a huge amount of literature and debates and philosophy which argue about what we should do, how we should act, what are the acts that lead, what are the virtuous acts, what is the good life. And there is debates and controversy, and there's a lot of wisdom. So by studying this, you can achieve, you can take a learned approach to life, just like somebody who studies calculus understands a lot better mathematics than somebody who's in kindergarten. So somebody who's trained in the debates that have taken place in history over what is the meaning of life, what is the good life, will have much deeper and more sophisticated understanding of how we should live than somebody who is told that, okay, don't listen to anybody, don't let anyone tell you how to live. That's your job, business, and you should just figure it out on your own. So that means that you are reducing somebody to a childlike state. You're not allowing him or her to access the wisdom of the ancients. So this loss of understanding of what the goals of life are has had serious consequences. So the secular society teaches you that wealth is very important, that you should pursue wealth. It doesn't tell you what you should do once you have wealth. Uh, what Similarly, it says freedom is great, freedom is wonderful, freedom is important, but what should you do with this freedom? It has nothing to say about that. Now, the result is that most people are stuck in childlike states. They say that, okay, with my freedom, I'll just pursue my selfish pleasure. I will do whatever makes me happy. Now, it turns out that this is self defeating, because what people value the most is being loved selflessly by others. So, man is a social animal, and we cannot get what we cannot give. Basically, this individualism and selfishness, um, and this results in a massive increase in loneliness, has been documented, loss of happiness, breakup of essential social structures like family, community, society. And this becomes the philosophy. Margaret Thatcher said that there is no such thing as society, it's all individuals. This is just a misconception, but this is the end result of thinking like this. So we have to, we have only one chance at life. So it's important for us to know what it is about. And it is not true, as the modern education teaches, that nobody can tell you anything about this. A lot of people have spent a lot of effort and time and energy in exploring these questions, in experimenting, and in living different kinds of lives. So, just as in any realm of life, you want to learn engineering, you go ask the engineers to teach you. If you want to learn medicine, you ask the people with the most experience who have learned from others. And similarly, if you want to learn the meaning of life, you have to ask the people who have devoted their lives to this question. If you don't just think about what would happen if you said that, okay, I'm not going to listen to anybody tell me anything about medicine, I'm going to look at herbs and plants and find out all about from my own experience and logic. Obviously, you would never get anywhere. The meaning of life is such an extremely important question that to simply uh, ignore all past experience is a very foolish strategy. So, what are the Islamic views on wealth? Uh, well, it's quite complicated and deep and not easily understood. But basically, um, for one thing, Islam forbids asceticism. That is, you're not supposed to go sit in a cave and give away all your possessions. So, the Quran says that beautify yourself, eat and drink freely, but do not waste. So this is moderation, the lesson of moderation. And similarly, monasticism, is not. Uh, the Quran says that we did not prescribe this. So Islam enjoins moderation in all activities. In consumption, you're not supposed to fast all the time. Although fasting is good, but occasionally you should eat and drink, but don't go to excess. You do not consume things to cause envy in others. That's prohibited. In fact, the reverse is true. There is a saying of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that if you purchase fruit and your neighbor sees you, then you should share it with him so that he doesn't feel deprived. Or if you can't afford to do that, then you should do it in secret. I mean, consume it in secret and bury the peels so that he does not notice that you have consumed fruit and feel envious. Similarly, the Quran says that you should not be too generous and you should not be too stingy. Three people came to the Prophet, and one of them said that I will fast all my life. One of them said that I will abstain from sex. One of them said that I will be engaged in worship continuously. So he forbade this excess. He said that don't do that. Sometime you should fast and sometime you should eat, and so on. There is a hadith, a saying of the Prophet that kissing your wife is an act of virtue. It brings rewards. So the people around him were very surprised that why should you get a reward, an act of merit from Allah for something that you like to do, that is pleasurable. So he said that, well, you see, if you do something which is permissible, it prevents you from doing things which are not permitted, like looking at other women. So um, Islam is a different religion. So Islam teaches us to balance external and internal goals. We should seek spiritual growth, but not by meditating in a cave and not by retiring from the world. In fact, the Islamic view is that the world, our activities in the world, is the means to pursue spiritual goals. So, for example, one of the teachings of the Quran is that you should give away, if you want to achieve the higher levels of taqwa, uh, spirituality, then you should give away the things that you love the most. That will provide training to your spirit, your nafs. And so you should do service for the love of God to all of the creation. Here, the creation includes not just human beings, but animals, plants. So we are enjoined to serve the creation because it is all the creation of God. It is the family of God in some narrations. So so we are engaged with the world, and actually that's also explicitly written here that it seems like you're part of the world, but you're not. In the sense that your engagement with the world is a means for striving for the other world. So this duality is made explicit in a hadith, which is a saying of the Prophet. Wealth has a deceptive appearance. It appears to be very sweet, but it is not really so. It is a blessing when earned with contentment with the heart, but there is no satisfaction in it when it is got with greed. So wealth is a test and a trial and temptation. If we use it to help others, then it leads to spiritual purification and progress. But if we hoard it and if we use it, so and we don't spend it for this, then it is harmful to us spiritually. So development requires correcting our priorities. Currently, you see, the standard definition of development is that it is the accumulation of wealth. The more money you have, the more developed you are. That's ridiculous because it's meaningless. This is a means to you can't take something which is a means to a goal and convert it into a goal. So, what are you going to do with that wealth? So, uh, first thing to realize is that every human being has infinite potential. The Quran says that if you save a life, it is as if you have saved the entire humanity. This is also in the Bible. So, what does this mean? So, on the face of it, it's a paradox. I mean, one human being, how can one human being equal 7 billion human beings? So, Here, the paradox can be resolved by thinking about the potential. See, every human being is like a seed. The seed can develop into a tree. The tree is huge and has no relation to the seed. So, if the human being realizes his potential, actually, this metaphor is used in the Quran, then it is like a tree which has deeply planted roots and it has branches which spread out to the skies. So, if you realize your potential, then you have every human being has the capability of changing the whole world and affecting the lives of the 7 billion people. And in that case, um, this is a precious life. On the other hand, if the seed remains a seed, then the potential has been wasted, and that life is not worth very much. So, the goal of life is to develop our capabilities as a human being. This requires making spiritual progress, but also many others. I mean, we have many different kinds of faculties. We have our minds, we have hearts, we have muscles, and physical capabilities, literary. We have many, humans are multidimensional, and we have multidimensional capabilities. Developing these capabilities is what the goal of life is. And the goal of the purpose of wealth is to allow us to develop these capabilities. So, in the Islamic concept, then, one key element is that we should be focused on human beings. Are they developing their capabilities in the right direction? The second very important aspect of Islam is that Islam emphasizes communities, neighborhoods. There's a huge amount of emphasis. The mosque is designed to create solidarity in the neighborhood. There's a verse in the Quran that bringing together of hearts of a community is more precious than all of the treasure in the world. Basically, all social structures, family, community, society, is built upon sacrifices that we give for others, uh, and individuals take pleasure in giving. Now, strangely enough, even though economic theory teaches us otherwise, empirical evidence shows that generosity is a very important long run driver of pleasure and happiness. Greed and selfishness is good for short term. You see something, you grab it, it gives you temporary pleasure. But in the long run, this action is harmful. If you want long run happiness, long run pleasure, then it turns out that generosity is much more important. And this is there is very strong empirical evidence for this. Another thing in which Islam again differs. Here I'm just mentioning the Islamic concepts without actually directly contrasting with the conventional. In my paper called Islam versus Economics, I have drawn the contrasts. But here I'm just trying to provide an introduction to what Islam says without actually uh, looking at the contrasts too deeply. So basically, Islam emphasizes process over outcomes. The journey is what matters. It's how you play the game, as opposed to the idea that the American proverb "winners talk, losers walk." So basically, your winning is everything, and so when you have this outcome-oriented thinking, which is the dominant philosophy in economics, okay, there is an ideal state and we have to achieve that ideal state. If we fail to achieve, then we have failed. So then, actually, it turns out that you can never achieve this ideal state. So you end up frustrated. However, when you focus on process, then you can achieve success at this moment. At this moment, if I am doing what I am meant to be doing, then I am successful. And this, how can I learn what I am meant to be doing in this period? This is if you are in touch with yourself, if you have spirituality, if you uh, are in harmony with your environment, then you will know what is right and what is wrong, and then you can you can have a much more satisfactory life than the life which is currently at, okay, my goal is to get a degree. If you get a degree after 4 years, then you will say, oh, now I'm successful. If you fail to get a degree, then you will say that I have failed. That's a distant goal, and often what happens is that once you achieve that degree, you find that this goal was not worth all the effort that I put into it. So uh, outcome oriented thinking is very harmful to our lives. We should shift to process oriented thinking. The circumstances that we face are our training grounds. If we seek personal development, then everything, a small frustration, small success, an encounter with a person in need, or otherwise, these are all at every moment of our life is an opportunity for personal development. And spirituality involves um, basically having this bond with others. This is what allows you to make spiritual progress. The more you are aware of how others around you are feeling, which happens on a spiritual level only. I mean, this is not available to you as a rational on the by logic and by facts and by observations, but you can feel, you can intuitively sense others, and by working on this, we can realize our common humanity, and we can weaken the hold of the selfish ego, which tells you that no, I am me and I'm separate from you. This this is actually harmful, and nearly all religious traditions teach you how to train and discipline your ego. In the Hindu tradition, uh, it is said that the ego is like the horses in your chariot. So if you give them free rein, if you say, okay, let them do whatever they want, then they will take you to the jungle and the wild, and they will not get you to your goal, because the so if you harness them, then they can get you to your goal. Similarly, our ego, our desires, these are the engine which drive us. But we have to be in control of our ego, not let the ego be in control of us. Today, all of the messages that you receive in your movies, in your media, in your books, in your environment, these are teaching you exactly the opposite. This is a state which is called by in Islam, that have you seen those people who have taken their nafs, their personal desires, for their God? So this is the current state of affairs, that our personal desires have become our gods. Whatever my uh, little uh, ego desires, that I must fulfill, and that is a mistake, and it is actually the biggest barrier to spiritual development. So Islamic views go beyond binaries. They often require the simultaneous realization of opposite truths. And as I mentioned, we are all the same, subject to same trials and temptations. At the same time, we are all unique. Uh, in the Islam, the faith lies between the love of God and the awe of God, and uh, it's a state in which um, I'm seeing that we are running out of time, so it's a complicated thought, so I will skip that. Um, and I will just say that, okay, these are all noble ideas and philosophies, but is there any concrete implementation of them? So I'd like to say that yes. Um, in fact, thought leaders for change have been Mahbubul Haq from uh, who um, who noticed the problems with GNP per capita, and he introduced the Human Development Index as an alternative, which takes into account health and education. His follower Amartya Sen developed the capabilities approach, which is actually articulates some of what I'm saying is the Islamic approach. Similarly, we have had unsung hero Akhtar Hamid Khan, who introduced the concept of community driven development. This is very different from government led or from private sector led. And this is actually much more in harmony with Islamic concepts. Similarly, we have had microfinance. Providing money to the poor is an extremely important element which is required and which Islam has its own methodology for. Similarly, we have had people like Abdul Sattar Edhi, who has devoted his life to service. He was a poor man, and he said that my goal is to provide service. So he collected money in order to provide medical service, and eventually he built up a huge foundation which is doing charity. And this is the Islamic concept. The difference is not that once you get $1 billion, then you start providing. You create a charitable fund. No, the what Abdul Sattar Edhi did was he had no money. He earned money in order to serve people. This is a concept that doesn't exist within the MBA programs as yet. Although now we are seeing the start of this concept of social entrepreneurship, which has this idea built in. Similarly, Abdul Haq Bari has created the Indus Hospital in Karachi, which provides millions of people, and it has serves millions of people, and it has no cash counters. It's funded purely by private charity, and anybody can walk in and get treatment. They don't ask you to produce money or identification. So these are just concrete implementations. The idea that I wanted to say is that there is a idea of society as a whole. This collectivity has been lost. As Thatcher said, there is no society. This, her saying it, makes it come true. Now, actually, what we need to do is to reverse the great transformation. We need to create society. We need to think of ourselves as a collectivity, and we need to think of every child on this planet as being our child and our responsibility. This is what Islam teaches us, and this is also basically what humanity teaches us. And so, if we can do that, if we can understand that it is our collective responsibility as human beings to take care of all of the people who are in need of any sort, it is not their job to provide money before they can get education. It is not their job to come up with money if they need treatment. It is our job to make sure that all of the people who are weak and suffering and oppressed, they benefit. And it is my job to devote my life and energies to achieving this goal. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Asim. Any questions?
I just have one question, if I may. I just wondered if there was a concrete case study